Thanks, David. That was just perfect. So here we are, almost 20 years on. The Articles of Incorporation of the center were filed in October of 1997. So this October will be 20 years since our technical existence. But we actually began meeting in January of '98. And the first couple of weeks, I don't know how long it was, maybe a month, we met at the new center on North Main, you know, where the art train is parked. And our first couple of meetings, we maybe had 20 or 25 people there, most of whom were recovering from Unity of Ann Arbor, including me. That had been a very tumultuous time in many lives. So we moved from there and spent a few weeks at the UU Church on Washtenaw, across from the Women's City Club, before they moved out to their huge place out on Ellsworth and Ann Arbor Saline. And then Sally found us a spot at Allen School. And we stayed at Allen School for quite a number of years. And we were quite happy there. We had a big closet where we could store everything we owned in a closet. And I have to tell you that, it was a lot of work, because every single week we had to set up first and then tear down. And a lot of energy gets consumed in that process. And if you don't know, most school auditoriums are not air conditioned. So in the summertime, I found myself, in full sweat mode before the service even started. Because running around and doing things and making stuff happen. And at some level, it was quite exhausting. And then one summer, Alan was going to undergo a remodel. So we got asked to move over to Pittsfield Elementary School. And we spent a summer at Pittsfield. And then we moved back to Allen. And then I think Alan got a new principal. And things got a little dicier. The principal didn't like the fact that we had this great big closet. So we got moved to a skinny little closet. And then it didn't work out so well. So we actually moved to Forsyth Middle School out on Newport Road. And we spent a couple, 3 years there until we decided that we should give up trying to find a home of our own, because it was just too much like pulling hen's teeth. We had had a couple of experiences of trying to acquire land to build a place, and it just never seemed to work out. Something always got in the way, and at some point it dawned on me, yours truly, that we could save a lot of money by having a place of our own instead of trying to build something from scratch. So we began looking around, and I talked to Jake Hayes, the landlord here, whom I've known for 25 years. And he said, yeah, we had churches in the past, so come on over and take a look. So a few of us came over here and looked, and it was pretty discouraging, because what looks like the fellowship hall and the classrooms and the kitchen and the bathrooms was really sort of a rabbit warren of little tiny rooms and hallways and closets. And the kitchen wasn't there and the bathrooms weren't there. The only bathroom serving the place was the one way in the back and what is over here now, the slop sink. And if you walked into this room, it was still a garage. It had a big floor drain right here in the middle where the floor pitches down to the floor drain. And the lotus window was a garage door. And these windows didn't exist. They were just block walls. And there was no carpet, there was no drywall, there was, raw concrete block. And the piece de resistance was the fact that there were 2 boats stored in there. Friends of the landlord had, said, you got some empty space where I can put my boat? And Jake said, sure. So there was a boat here and a boat over there where the sound deck is. And the place reeked of 2-cycle fuel, gasoline and oil mix smells like. Well, that's what it smelled like when you walked in this room. And I said, wow, this place has really got possibilities. And everybody else said, Dave stepped off the end of the dock. He's lost his mind. But little did they know that I'm a Taurus. And I see things that don't exist. And I'm a builder. I mean, I do things to create things. And I can see from the raw material what's possible. And then, we engaged in a barn raising. We literally said, okay, let's do it. And we spent probably $50,000 on materials to rehab this place, to turn it into something that we could actually make use of. And that was, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2007, yeah, so I think it's 10 years this fall when we've been here. So we mustered up a crew of volunteers, did a lot of the work here ourselves. We built the staircase and gained access to the upstairs.
Who created this wonderful design? Who created this wonderful design? Vivian. Right here. Vivian.
She's right there.
Vivian was responsible for this. The design of the space was created by an architect friend of mine, Sabah Lal, who's a Persian guy. And he's actually offered to design a place if we ever find a piece of land for no charge. So we have an architect in the wings ready to help us design something if we can ever get off dead center enough to find a piece of land we can afford and a way clear towards building something. So you can't imagine, well, those of you who were here know how much work it was. I'm not going to pick on anybody except Rod. Because Rod was here almost as much as I was. During that 4 or 5 month period, we started in the summer of '07. We had to pour some concrete in the floor here to level it and get rid of the floor drain. We took down the garage door and built the glass block wall. We had a guy come in with a big target saw, which is a chainsaw that has a diamond blade on it, and cut holes for these windows, and cut a hole for that door, because the space was up there, but it hadn't been accessible. So we had to get rid of all the rabbit-warren rooms out in the fellowship hall, build the kitchen, build the bathrooms. We saw cut the concrete floor, jackhammered the concrete out to make room for the new plumbing lines to service the bathroom. Rod did all of the wiring, had a crew of people pulling wire through conduit that he pulled. And amazingly, we got it done, well, almost done, in time for the Interfaith Roundtable Thanksgiving celebration service, which was held here in 2007, in November.
2006.
Was it 6?
Because I joined in 07 and it was already built. Oh, okay.
I concur.
Okay. Yeah, what do I know? We lived through it, but the process was exhausting. That 3 or 4 months that we were here, I was here every day, working fingers to the shoulder blade, except Sunday. We took Sundays off. We didn't do any physical work here on a Sunday. And all the time we were still at Forsyth. And then, you know, we had the roundtable Thanksgiving service here. We had the chairs, but we didn't have carpet. And everybody was quite understanding about that. We didn't have stalls in the bathrooms. We had shower curtains hanging up. So it took us a few weeks to actually get it ready to be serviceable. And the first morning that we walked in here and said, "This is our place," there were a lot of tears shed. There really were, because it was a very emotional time. You know, we've been schlepping all of our stuff for years between school auditoriums and closets of one size or another. And, you know, we got it done. And it has served us extremely well. And who knows what the future holds. We have not had a lease here for years. We operate on a month-to-month tenancy. We know that the landlord loves us and is happy to have us here, but we also know that Costco stands across the street on land that used to have buildings just like this one. And Costco came along and offered Jake, my friend Jake, $5 million check for a deed to those. And he said, "Well, okay." Yeah, right. Of course he said okay. And the problem that we have is that about that time, he decided that he didn't want to sign any more 5-year leases, which is, we had a 5.5-year lease here initially. And all he wanted to do was sign 1-year leases. And we said, well, what's the point of that? If somebody comes along and makes that proverbial offer, we're going to have to deal with that anyway. So we've just been happy to have a month-to-month tenancy, knowing that he's not going to kick us out because he's got nobody else to put in here. And until the next big box store comes along and makes that offer, we're good. So that's the physical history. What I want to share with you now is a little bit about our philosophical and theological, although I don't much care for the term theology, history. When we started, we were mostly recovering from unity. So we knew some things about what we liked and what we didn't like. So when we first started, you could hardly tell the difference between us and a unity service. And one of the things that we did was to try and incorporate into our philosophy and our sense of what's going on in the religious world is a celebration of the truth we found in other traditions. We had guest speakers. Rabbi Doberson, my friend from Beth Israel, was here. A chaplain from Milan Federal Correctional Institution was here as a Muslim chaplain. And we tried to celebrate other religious paths. But it actually got to be very difficult because we couldn't decide who to be. And we couldn't be everybody. And we didn't want to be all of anybody else, because there are parts, there are pearls of wisdom in all the paths, but there are also rocks that just didn't sit well with me. So we had a great deal of difficulty deciding what to celebrate, which holiday. So we just, I don't know if it was ever a conscious decision, but it was just a process where we became focused on spiritual principle, on the truth that we found in all of the religious paths of the world, and the truth that the mystics of all time have enunciated. And the mystics have always told us that we are one. We are all one. And what that really means is that we are literally individuations of divinity. We are equal expressions of divinity. We are God, Godding as us. That's what we are. And so the secret to actually bringing that into everyday life was what we tried to organize around. And we began the process by looking at other literature, other spiritual guidance. And amongst those influencing us was Neil Donald Walsh and his Conversations with God series, Dr. David Hawkins and his work on consciousness, Byron Katie and her work on questioning your thinking, A Course in Miracles, which has been a part of my path for the better part of 30 years. The Monday night course group actually began over at Unity almost 23 years ago. So I've been leading that Monday night group for 23 years, which I intend to keep doing, by the way. And recently we've bumped into Marshall Rosenberg in the nonviolent communication realm. We've been in love with Aaron, the entity that Barbara Brodsky channels, for years and years, well, almost 20 years. Barbara and I began our friendship right after we organized 20 years ago. And Aaron is a wonderful spirit. His last incarnation was 500 years ago as a Buddhist meditation master. And the incarnation previous to that, he was a shepherd boy named Nathaniel, who just happened to be best boyhood friends with a guy named Jeshua ben Joseph, who the world knows as Jesus. And this relationship has been a serious part and a serious influence on how I see the world. So much of what goes on here on Sunday is a direct result of my thinking and my growth and my understanding of how Spirit works and how the world works and what we're up to and what's going on. So, as I said earlier, we began a few years ago, and I can't tell you when the date was. Heck, I didn't even know what date we actually began work on this place, so what do I know? At some point in that 20-year period, we began the transition from trying to be a little of everybody into being spiritual but not religious, being a teacher of spiritual principle, being a teacher of divinity, which is what we are. And part of that process was affirming again that there are no mandatory beliefs. You don't have to believe anything in particular to be comfortable here. And also, the opposite side of that coin is there are no disqualifying beliefs. Rod will tell you, even though he just left the room. I couldn't get to it any sooner, sorry. That he was kicked out of the Methodist Church in Manchester because he told the minister that he believed in reincarnation. And the minister said, well, if that's what you believe, you can't be here. You gotta leave. And so we don't have any beliefs like that. We don't have any disqualifying beliefs. You can believe in reincarnation or not. It's not required. I happen to believe in it. I've had experiences that call it into direct understanding of my karmic ancestry. But it's not required. It's simply not required. So, what we're up to, and what we've been up to for 20 years, is creating a space in which individuals can select for themselves from this smorgasbord of sources of guidance and create for yourself a cosmology, a view of the world that works for you. And it's real clear to me that that's been working. You know, we've really done yeoman's work in creating an energy around this place that's going to work. And I see it continuing. I see Lauren jumping right in and bringing us all closer to the ideal of God realization. So, I'm thrilled to hand the baton to young Miss Lauren Tatarsky. So, I guess it's open mic time. But if you don't want to say anything, that's okay too.
Bad chance.